what we're going to be going through today is going to be the customer assist queues and kind of just discussing that and how Verify can be used to leverage, dashboard reporting as well as structured reporting and automated scheduled delivery, as well as quick history search lookups and all that good fun stuff. So I just want to first start out with a quick little kind of image here with the backdrop of my dashboard here, because I just want to kind of just discuss real quickly about these CAQs or customer assist queues. Essentially, what they are is they're skill-based routing queues, or pretty much skill-based routing on top of the standard queue options. So certainly those were formerly known as customer experience essentials. So certainly those buzzwords are kind of flying around out there over the previous X amount of months. But definitely again, essentials are customer assist queues. Certainly Verify can report on them, read them from Control Hub from the API, and leverage them for productivity as well as shortcomings for the environments. So just kind of want to bring that up. So at the end of the day, again, just advanced skill-based routing for the standard queues. Now, looking at Verify here, we're going to pretty much stay between these first two modules here. So dashboard and widgets, as well as the analytic reporting. So we'll get a little deeper in the data in a moment or so. But very high level. So there's definitely ease of use to go ahead and build out dashboard / wallboard functionality for KPIs and metrics and volume aesthetics for the call queues within a Webex environment, whether those are standard or whether those are CAQs or those customer assist queues. So very easy for us to go ahead and tailor dashboard widget items to go ahead and lay out this content. Can be very general. We could be just kind of looking at just call traffic broken down by date as an example for a current and previous week time frame for the call queues. Now I am using one of my labs here in Verify, so not real world data necessarily, but definitely a smaller volume probably out than all that are watching this are kind of used to seeing. Now, as an example here, we can definitely bring to light, the calls that are, being transferred or routed through auto attendants to these call queues to then be serviced by the agents that are responsible for handling the call traffic. Now, regardless of how those queues are set up, whether they are CAQs, whether they're in a broadcast variety or an idle kind of ring configuration from in WebEx, certainly we're going to be able to read those and see exactly who's handling those calls, who's logged in during these calls being presented to the queues, and certainly give overall queue health, but also kind of summarization and productivity there, but also breakdowns into the agents as well, how they're performing, what their call volumes over time periods look as well, but also at the queue level, what are maybe some shortcomings? Are calls, being abandoned at a high rate? Are calls being overflowed to additional call queues? Are calls being, not being handled and rolling over to voicemail? So there's definitely a lot of content that can certainly be achieved through Verify from both a dashboard perspective, but also a structured analytics reporting perspective as well. We're going to cover both here. So just very high level here, looking at one of my dashboards. Now, we've definitely showcased this, plenty of times over the previous couple of years, but definitely there's going to be ease of use to go ahead and build out one of our widgets. So now, whether or not feature is always going to be call analytics for the call-based widgets, but again, looking at our Webex calling organization, I believe it's this one right here. So ability to go ahead and build out different style widgets. So distribution or donut kind of chart widgets that have kind of slices segmented by a grouping measure that you specify, whether those are users, whether those are call queues, whether those are hunt groups as well. So there's definitely different options. There's going to be grouping statistic widgets. There's going to be call volume with these bar charts dimly in the background, as well as concurrency. So there's concurrency widgets where we can see what is the peak time or hour of day, or maybe 10-minute aggregate interval where calls are being presented into this queue over, again, a relative time frame of something like a current previous week or current previous month. So there's definitely plenty of historical time unit options on the table. Now, I like to use current previous week myself. So there's definitely a breakdown here, just kind of identifying call queues, and I can certainly pull back the curtain a hair here just to showcase how I'm kind of leveraging these. Now, again, I'm not going to walk through each and every different breakdown of a widget type here, but certainly in this one, we are grouping it by the called queue, but the search sets that are feeding this are looking at a couple different queues that I have in this lab. The only two that actually have data are going to be the finance, I believe, and the executive call queues. Thus, what's being rendered here in the background in this grouping table. So again, for this time unit that I did specify, just very high level. How many calls actually came to these queues? Now, again, lab data here, kind of small volumes here, but again, maybe we can just pick apart this kind of finance queue with these 36 calls. Now, collectively, we see, yeah, 37, certainly 36 plus one gives the look and feel for that. But definitely also, again, so if we look at finance or the users or the distribution of these call queues, again, what is their heavy hour of the day? What is the peak that we've seen over this time frame for these 36 calls? When are these calls happening, by date or by hour of day? Who's participating in them? We can certainly suppress the auto attendant if we want to, but again, we can certainly provide that high level kind of user distribution kind of in these widget varieties here. Now, while there's definitely hunt group content that can certainly be achieved in here as well, but there's always different dashboards and different views that one can certainly leverage and build within Verify with all of our supported platforms. So as an example, I have a secondary dashboard right here that's actually going to focus specifically at the call queues, CA queues, or those customer assist queues included as well. So now, again, looking at again, I do keep kind of harping on current previous week. That is my preference of time, go-to time frame. But again, let's pick apart this finance CQ. We see that 36 calls over this relative time frame have come in. We can certainly see what the total number of call duration is for these 36 calls. But again, also, what are the answer rates looking like? How often are these calls being answered? What is my answer rate at the queue level? So it's just short of 92%, but that's pretty good. Now, nothing necessarily was abandoned at the queue itself, but we definitely see 3 calls that were not entertained and actually rolled over to voicemail. So we're gonna go down the rabbit's hole and figure out what those 3 calls are in a moment as well, at a pretty granular nature in the next section. But again, what's nice about these dashboards slash wallboards and Verify is we can quickly assemble this content, and then again, once it's built, it's semi set in stone. Where these things also have interval refreshes built into them. So every couple of minutes or every 30 seconds, depending on what the interval refresh is set to, these are going to be refreshing with more recent live content as time is progressing throughout the day. Now, whether or not these timeframes are actually pointing at the current day, broken down by hour of day, completely, ease of use and recommended to do such. But also, there's definitely historical longevity that we can vet the data as well. So, if we're looking for trends, if we're looking to see, which days do we have so many, calls that are abandoned or going to voicemail, we can easily leverage that over a wider time frame. Not to say that we can't for something broken down for the current day. Just comes down to each their own how we want to go ahead and build up these boards. But again, there's a lot of content that can certainly be derived from them. What are the totals that are coming into these call queues? What are the breakdowns? Where are all these calls going? Now, out in the field, it's going to be a lot different. Here in my lab, I've only had these 2 queues with data. But again, this could be certainly a decent sized list just to see exactly from a managerial or supervisor level, where are most of our call traffic coming through the auto attendants? Are they going to one of these 5 queues? Are they going to these 10 queues? But also kind of the breakdowns, kind of a leaderboard sort as well, just to see, who are the peak queues and certainly what are their answer rates and maybe missed call rates as well. Now, again, we can definitely look at these 36 calls for finance, even at the dashboard level. We can break them down, again, into a distribution where we can see what users are actually answering these calls, who are our peak performers. Can certainly hover over the segments in this kind of little pie chart or this little donut chart here and see that Chame is my peak performer, but as well as we can certainly see the breakdowns maybe in a grouping table. So we can see here, that know exactly who's logged in the most to see that when the calls were coming into the queue. We can definitely see that looks like Buck Wilson here is happens to be, or is that Wilson Buck? Excuse me. Wilson Buck seems to be our peak performer for answering about 54% of the calls of these 36 that came in during this time frame once again. But again, for the group as a whole, again, we did have a small percentage of calls that did roll on over to voicemail that weren't answered. So there's different ways to go ahead and build this data out. Again, we can even break down some of the granularity if we want to look at those voicemail calls. What were the 3 external phone numbers that did dial in? Did they warrant a callback? So there's definitely that level of deliverable from the dashboards. Now, these dashboards, as always, for these queues can certainly be shared with other application users, other user groups, or they can be shared out with other managers or supervisors or even executives kind of in a read-only capacity. From the dashboards, we're going to turn on the permalinking right here, and then we can turn on the public access toggle and then copy this URL and save it. And then we can just turn around and hand that link on over to whomever. What it will do is it will render a read-only look and feel of the same dashboard we were just looking at without any admin functionality at all. So these are fantastic for embedding into internet links, but also even having them bookmarked or running on larger displays or television screens out in the environment is very valuable because again, these widgets are all refreshing every couple of minutes as time is progressing. So it's not going to be anything kind of stale at a point in time. But even someone that gets that gets handed one of these links, maybe if they harm the appearance of it, and on Monday morning the television screen looks like this for the environment, it's pretty bulletproof because all anyone would need to do is just refresh the browser. It's going to snap back to its original form with current and live content. So labs may be running a little slow at the moment, but it should be back in a sec. But again, these permanent links are pretty bulletproof, and these are good to kind of provide for again the high the high level presentation on larger displays, or even to to managers or supervisors that don't necessarily want to get deep into the reporting. So again, different ways to go ahead and copy and build things out. But again, very high level exposure for what's happening at these call queues. What are their answer rates? What are their abandonment rates? What are their voicemail rates? What does the user breakdown look like? Does the collective team, are they answering enough calls? Again, there's definitely going to be more than one agent logged in at a certain time. So that's why the queue call counts will be a little higher, certainly, but definitely the answer counts are certainly what you want to kind of steer your eyeballs towards. Not to say that a 54% answer rate is bad necessarily, because again, this is certainly a shared queue with other agents that should be also answering call traffic as well. Now, I'm going to steer the ship on over to the analytics module, or module number 2 here. Now, twofold. So we can certainly provide the dashboards. Obviously, they're attractive. They're very interactive as well, and they're prettier on the eyes for sure. But also from the analytics module, we definitely can look at the call queues, or the call customer assist queues, or the essential queues, or the standard queues in the same variety. So in the history section, this does provide kind of the sandboxing, or the kind of the quick searching option here within Verify at a very granular level. So we definitely have a time window here. I kind of cheated ahead of time to set this to current and previous week. Most of the time, if you're just logging in, it'll default to current day, but you can certainly hit the time window and select a different relative time frame. I'm using current and previous week. There's different search criteria or filters that we can always leverage and use. So at this very history kind of search level here, just kind of an ad hoc search is really what this is. We can certainly render a lot of different search filters, aka search criteria. Now, we do have dynamic keyword searching built into every dropdown that we have. So I simply type the letter Q, and it'll pull up called Q, and I can easily select that and then lock that in with the add criteria toggle. But also we can see the drop-down list of all the call queues, whether they're standard queues, whether they're essentials, or customer assist queues. We're going to read them from Control Hub pretty easily. Again, my lab is definitely reading a handful of these call queues right here from one of our control hubs, but unfortunately, I only have data for the finance or the executive queues, so I'm just going to run with those for now. So I'll pick on the finance call queue, mirror kind of the same kind of time frame I had in my dashboards as well. So I was using current and previous week, so I think there were 36, 37 calls about that. So go ahead and just viewing these results for that time frame, I should be able to see the very granularity of these 36 in a moment or so here. And here they are. So again, we can go ahead and vet these calls at a very granular nature here. Now, there is sequencing that's baked into this as well, because there's always at least more than one. Normally, most of the time, there's more than, well, definitely for call queues, pardon me, let me backpedal here. There's definitely always going to be more than one call leg or call event for call queues or hunt groups, because there's always some type of auto attendant or some type of system that's front ending it, let's say the least. But also, there's going to be a broadcast out to all the agents that are on within that call queue that should be answering calls. Now, there's definitely going to be a lot of zero duration calls kind of in these kind of look and feels. Again, just because there's only one person at the end of the day is going to be able to answer that call. Everyone else is going to have an event or a call like that does get generated from Webex that's going to be of the zero duration variety, to be expected and completely normal. We just go ahead and filter those out so that we're not giving any credit, if you will, or positive or negative to the users that didn't actually answer the call. So again, we can certainly vet this data here. There's availability to go ahead and add additional columns into this kind of this history section review, because certainly one can definitely kind of make this your own, and we definitely advocate for that. So the box over here on the right is certainly what we're dimly able to see visually in the background. I do believe we load up about 10 or so out of the box, but definitely there's plenty of options over on the left, from the originating party and terminating parties to different IDs, queue names, and timers, and all that can certainly be baked in here as well. So again, to each their own, but definitely you can go ahead and kind of synthesize this while you're reviewing these call queue stuff and these statistics at a pretty granular level. But we're going to even go even deeper here in a second. But again, this is just very high level calls that are coming into this finance call queue. Again, we're seeing a lot of auto attendant stuff, but there's also plenty of other user based call legs that are baked in here as well. And there's all kinds of different information for them. There's going to be call scenarios that verifies labeling on them all as well. So again, these are all going to be not connected because somebody at the very bottom here, and let's slide to the left here, and we can see the user that, oops, and we can actually see, why are you doing? Here we go. No, I guess not. We can see the user that's actually answering that phone call. So all these not connected records are expected. So we can actually go this one step further here as well. We can actually go ahead and export these results. Now, earlier we did see three calls that went to voicemail. Maybe we want to kind of track those down a little bit. Now, from the history section here, we can export data into a report in a pretty granular fashion. But another thing we're going to make sure is turned on is the start to finish logic, or what may be known termed as cradle to grave reporting. So we'll want to make sure this toggle is turned on. And then for these 36 calls, we can go ahead and export these results, which we will do right now. I'm skipping over some of these toggles in the middle just because we don't need to make everything very grand and um, finalized just yet. This is a very hard, rough draft, if you will. So for these 36 calls, let's just take a quick peek. So very high level again. So this could look very similar to what I had on my dashboard widgets for again, the time frame of current and previous week. 36 calls for the finance call queue. 33 of them were answered. 3 were not connected and they rolled over to voicemail. So we're going to want to take a peek at those. So, pardon me. What's going to be, pardon me. So what's going to be down here is going to be each and every one of these calls or these sequences. So there's going to be 36 of these. There's also on the far right going to be related calls. Now, what these links are going to have is the full call flow, all the individual events or call legs that kind of roll up and make up the whole sequence. Much better. Now, what we can do with these links is, I mean, certainly we can peruse the raw detail of these 36 calls, but essentially, there's pretty much going to be just, I would think things is coming to the call queue initially to the call center premium at the onset. Okay, that makes sense. So we can actually drill down into these records as well and actually see everything that went into this record, into this one call. Because at the end of the day, it's really just one call that came into the environment, but we can see exactly how the call was manipulated. This may have been, looks like we have an attendant video here. We have a hunt group that actually prepended this. And then we have Kelly rang on that one. And then we see, that Rachel, essentially we can read it top down. We see that Carla pretty much starts the call. She calls out to an external entity, and then she actually transfers that call around. So we can certainly see that, but then by the time it gets all the way down to the call queue, and that's why these are bolded in orange, is because the finance call queue labeling is here, and that was the basis of my my export filter here. So we can see exactly, again, what's going on with this. We see the call come down to the auto attendants of the Burlington AA. So we certainly see that. We see it's connected for 1 minute and 47 seconds. It does have an answer flag on the scenario here at the queue level. Now, underneath that, we'll see probably a bevy of zero duration, not connected call records, but it will list out each and every one of the agents in that group for that call queue. And then essentially, hopefully, the one at the very bottom should be the one that is actually answering the call queue. So whether it's 10 agents that are, that make up the that call queue as far as members that are logged in during that time frame, the control hub will generate 10 call records, 9 being of the not connected zero duration variety, and 1 actually having the meat of the positive talk time and the duration, which is Jalen Mathis right here. So we can see that. So again, this is a little deep down the rabbit hole, but again, this definitely gives exposure to what's happening. Now, I'm not even kind of bringing to light other things that could be happening as well. So there could be calls that are, again, coming to the finance call queue where maybe they speak to somebody, maybe they don't, maybe they overflow to, an overflow call queue or get redirected to, to an answering service or something like that, depending on what's set up with the customer assist queue routing. So again, it does have advanced measures to go ahead and do things, but at the detail level from Webex, we're going to put it into the same modality, if you will. So even if this call was not handled by, looks like Willow Ashley here for 20 minutes, maybe it forwarded out elsewhere. Verify is going to know about that. At least the control hub will give us a destination of where that call went to if it's outside of the environment. If it stayed inside the environment, bounced around to different call queues or overflows or hunt groups or zeroing out to the operator or something along those lines, all of that will be stitched in here. And again, that can be read from top down to see each and every ebb and flow and step of a call. Now, again, that definitely gets down the rabbit hole a little bit. But again, we also have reports as well for Webex calling. So we do have some templates. Now, not to say that they're the end all be all, but certainly on kb.verify.com, on our knowledge base library here. We can go into the report templates if you want to take a quick look and feel of what some of the samples could look like. I'm pretty much going to harp on for this show, this song and dance, pretty much the call queue summary by agent and the call queue summary reports. We can certainly look at those, but I have some waiting in the wings here. So again, the history section, we can quickly vet whatever we need to. We can put in specific users if we needed to look at them and see, what is their relation to calls that are coming to the users, to and uh, queued and not queued calls, let's just say. So that's definitely on the table as well. So if they're of the inbound variety, we want to look at, the called or the inbound user, the inbound calls being handled by an internal user. Certainly we have the user lookups as well, where we can look at all of those users at will. So we definitely will have your user list that we're reading there as well. But then again, if we want to go a little bit further, let me just step on into the report section here. I do have two reports. I have a queue agent summary report and a queue report as well. I'm going to go ahead and just run these real briefly for, again, my favorite time frame of current and previous week. I will call on my label sets. Perfect. I love breadcrumbs. So let's look at the finance call queue for, again, the current and previous week in relation to our quick history search, but also the dashboard widgets we were entertaining earlier. That's right, I've got both of them in here. Okay, so executives in here as well. But again, I'm mainly focusing on the finance call queue. All I really did was use, one of our base templates in here, use the call queue lookup that's already in there, and pretty much just point at these two queues. I think I actually have more that are in there anyways, but these are only rendered because they have data in my lab. But now we can see the same things that we saw before on the export, on the dashboard widgets. 36 total queued calls, 33 of them are answered, 3 went over to voicemail. If we need to, we can certainly break down and provide time period tables as well for one or multiple call queues as well. If we want to look at again, their total and queued calls, which should mirror. So you can certainly eliminate total call count if you don't want to see that, or just exclude queued call count preference, of course. But again, how many calls are being answered on which date? If we want to include a secondary time unit, maybe hour of day as an example, then we can also see what hours of the day are the peak hours, or one of the most busy hours, or when are calls abandoning or going to voicemail with most frequency. And it looks like those three happened. Don't know what happened to those, but we can also provide graphical representation as well. So again, we can choose to collapse and remove the time period data tables if we wanted to, and run with charts, or you can certainly leverage both or one or the other. You definitely have preferences, of course. But again, ability to call on multiple call queues, ability to kind of break down multiple different time units as well. Again, now in my lab, I don't have any abandoned calls. But again, do we have some calls that are in question? Is there a lot of abandonment calls that you're unaware of that are happening in the environment that are not being serviced, or are they calls rolling over and in a not connected variety to voicemail as an example? So those will certainly be identified and rendered as well. But let's just take a quick look at maybe one other agent report. So there's also an agent report, or a CQ agent-based report, if we want kind of the end user breakdown. So the previous report was just very high level queue centric. We also have this report template as well, where we can be very agent specific for those call queues as well, with the high level summary in there as well. So depending preference, of course, once again, there's always different ways to achieve the same goal. But again, this one is kind of picking on, again, that finance call queue. Again, one or the other, we can certainly leverage total or queue. They're going to be the exact same if we're looking at call queues once again. But again, 36 calls came into finance during this current previous week time frame. 33 were answered, 0 were abandoned, oddly, but 3 rolled over and went to voicemail. And there's one thing I forgot from the history section. We're going to go chase those 3 down. But again, user breakdowns. Who are our peak performers? How many users, what users were logged in the most? Obviously, Shane and Victor were. They didn't do a lot of answering. Maybe they're the managers. I don't know. But certainly we can see who is the peak performer answering the most calls. It is Wilson. We can break down into Wilson's calls if we need to and see each and every one of those calls that he handled or that was presented to. But there's also time period based stats that we can embed into the report as well, which I don't have in this example. But again, if we need to have those time period breakdowns for the call queue or the group users or operators specifically, can definitely do that as well. But there are those three calls that went to voicemail. I forgot to chase those down. Let's go do that right now. So when I did export from the history section, those 36 calls for finance for this time frame, some went to voicemail and were not picked up. So let's go find those. Of course, there's a column there. You know what? The word retrieval will do it for me. There they are. Perfect. Okay. So here's an example. Again, this is finance call queue. So external inbound caller. So now we're down in the cradle to grave section here. What we can see here on the sequence here on July 30th for 1 minute and 4 seconds, Zachary Walker dialed in to the auto attendant, got connected with the finance call queue here, and we can see all the zero duration agents there. But then, oh yeah, so nobody answers this. So out of the whole agent list, nobody answers this. So everybody is a zero duration. But then we see for 8 seconds, this call pop out of the queue and go over to voicemail. So Variphy is definitely going to flag that as voicemail, and certainly we can certainly easily bring that to light if we need to render, what time of day those are happening, and is that a common pattern between abandoned call counts and those voicemail call counts? Most certainly we can. Let me think here. Templates, plenty of call queue templates, history section, custom labels as well. I'll save those for another day, but certainly we can relabel things accordingly. So if we don't want to, if we want to change the vernacular, if you will, on any of our column headers or our grouping headers, certainly that can be achieved as well. Brian, I think I'm a little tapped on Webex call queues at the moment. Might there be any questions floating out there for me, sir?
No questions today, so that means you did your job.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, thanks. Thanks again, as always. That was a great presentation. Got a lot of information in there.